You've seen the top 10 breweries of 2021 and my review in beer, but now this is my review in music. The top 10 albums that I think of 2021 and also one artist that I've discovered this year. So keep on watching to find out what they are. Welcome back to Rocker's Beer Review. It is now the 31st of December, the last day of the year. So I'm going to do my review of the year in terms of the music they've done. So those that have watched the channel have seen a lot of my ranking videos, my reviews of new albums that have come out this year. But I thought I'd put together a sort of a list of the top 10 albums that I've enjoyed in this year. I think it's been a pretty sort of quiet year in terms of releases. Obviously the pandemic, 2020, I don't suppose there are many bands doing recording because of lockdowns and all the rest of it. And this year, you know, they still haven't been able to tour, so I think a lot of them have held back releases. So we've had some pretty good releases though by some sort of quite key bands and some comeback albums, which we'll go into in a minute. But I think that next year, 2022, is going to be a really big year for music, because I think there's going to be a lot of bands bringing out their music with the hope that they're going to tour without any restrictions. Now, hopefully that's going to be the case. We don't know, obviously, but I still have there's a lot of bands that I know that are releasing albums this year. There's also been an issue, and a lot of people may not realise this, that there's been an issue with packaging and discs and stuff like that. So there's a lot of bands that have recorded albums this year, but haven't been able to release them because they can't get all the manufacturing side of things done, whether that's due to Brexit or whether that's due to the pandemic or whatever. But I know that certainly Marillion is one of those bands that had an album that could have easily come out this year, but they can't get it manufactured in time. I think there's someone else I've read somewhere that apparently because of Adele releasing an album this year, that's why this has all happened, because she's taken all the packaging. I don't know, all the manufacturing has been made on her album. But that aside, let's go through the top 10 albums of 2021. I'm not going to put these in any sort of order as such, so you know they're not in order. I'm just going to put the 10 in. But the first one I'm going to come up with is probably my album of the year, actually, and that is the self-titled album by Helloween that came out this year. An absolutely brilliant return to form for me, for Helloween. Obviously, Michael Kiske and Kai Hansen come back into the band. They toured before with those, and obviously that was more of a sort of classic hits. But this is all new music, and I found it a really, really great album. It's great how Andy Darris, the other singer, and Michael Kiske can sort of have merged their voices together and singing in harmony on the album, and it brings a massive, for me, a real extra dimension to the music. I haven't really listened to much Helloween over the last sort of probably 20 years, really. And this album really sort of got me back into them again. So much so that I went back through all the back catalogue. You may have seen the ranking that I did just, around about Helloween. I did the ranking of the Helloween albums. And I really enjoyed some of those Andy Darris led albums. Certainly, Hell on Earth and Gambling with the Devil, the two albums I'm still listening to quite a lot now. I've really enjoyed them. So I think thanks to that Helloween 2021 album that came out this year, has got me back into Helloween and got me back into power metal again. You know, it's a really great album, and one of the highlights of this year. The other album that is going to be in my list would be the new Maiden album that came out, Senjutsu. I think this is just a brilliant Iron Maiden album, really. It's they are moving more towards this progressive metal in terms of the songs are getting longer and longer. There's more longer songs on it. But I think as an album as a whole, I think it's very consistently good. I think all the tracks are good. There's some really great ones on there. I really like Hell on Earth, which is one of the longer ones, and also Lost in a Lost World is another one that I really like. The only track I still haven't got into is probably the title track. But I think it's a great album and a good return to form. Although I think the Book of Souls, their previous album, was also very good. But Senjutsu is going to have to make my top 10 of the year. Third album on my list is The Battle of Garden Gates by Greta Van Fleet. Now, this was a band that I was aware of, and I knew that their comparisons with Led Zeppelin, but I hadn't really listened to any of their earlier stuff. But I thought this album has a great impact. Brilliant. I think as much as there's a lot of Robert Plant comparisons with the singer, I think that his voice has developed, but he's got a really strong and quite a striking voice, really. Although this isn't normally the sort of music that I listen to much these days, I'm much more in that sort of progressive range. But this is definitely a classic rock 70s sort of throwback sound. Brilliant guitar solos, which, you know, for me has been a highlight. The last song on the album, if nothing else, listen to that, because it's like there's about a 4-minute guitar solo in the middle of it, and to me it's the best guitar solo I've heard since probably Freebirds. That's how good it is, you know. Brilliant. But the whole album is really good and one of my highlights of the year. Fourth album on my list is The View from the Top of the World by Dream Theater. Again, another return to form, I think. After the last couple of albums are not really that great. I mean, this is probably the strongest album since Mike Portnoy left, in my opinion. Consistently good. You know, as much as there's a lot of the sort of widdly overlong instrumental parts, it's much more accessible than I think than some of their, certainly some albums like The Astonishing, that huge mega concept album that nobody really liked. But I think it's a real return to form. It reminds me more of Octavarium in terms of the album, the structure of it. But I think it's a really good album. So I'm putting Dream Theater in their View from the Top of the World. The next album, and this is one that I haven't reviewed on the channel, and it's probably a band that not a lot of people have heard of. They're a Scandinavian band called Leprous, and their album is called Aphelion. This album came out this year. Now, Leprous, for me, are the masters of modern progressive metal. Now, a lot of people think, you know, have this impression that progressive metal is like Dream Theater, lots of guitar solos, keyboard solos, long instrumental sort of breaks and stuff like that. But I think that Leprous are much more the sort of modern side. So although there's guitar solos, they're few and far between. Their songs aren't overly long, but it's much more, you know, they bring other things into the music, and to me, it's up there. Probably it's that and Helloween are probably my top albums of the year. So if you haven't given them a try, Leprous Aphelion, that's their new album. They've had a few albums before that, and they are good, but this one to me is a real step above. Just a really good slab of modern progressive metal. Let me know if you've heard of Leprous before, you're aware of the work, and you've heard their album and you like it. Is it up there? I think if you have heard of them, got the album, you'll be going, yeah, Rocky, you're right. That is an absolute superb album. But if you're not a fan or you've not heard of them before, then give them a go. What I'm going to do is I'll put the link to the Spotify albums in the description to this video, so you can access them and see what you think in terms of those albums. Now, we're taking a little bit of a steer away from the sort of progressive metal and heavy metal on my next pick, and this one's quite different for me. This is not normally the sort of music I listen to, and it's probably one of the, you know, I'm not quite sure when it came out in 2021, but I only just really discovered it, and that's mainly because it's been given the progressive rock magazine album of the year, and that is The Art of Losing by the Anchoress. Now, the Anchoress is a female singer, which I forget her name. I think it's Catherine, her name is, and she's actually around this part of the world in Cheshire. So a local person. She's done stuff with Paul Draper from Manson before. She's done other little bits and bobs as well with other sort of progressive artists, like and I think she's done things on. She may have even done stuff with Steve Wilson. But anyway, this album is really good. If you like Kate Bush, I mean, this is, again, it's quite different. I don't know how many people in the channel who watch this channel say they're massive fans of Kate Bush. But if you're into that Kate Bush, Peter Gabriel solo stuff, it's very much in that sort of genre. I mean, obviously, female singer. It's sort of progressive in a way that Kate Bush was. It's very, very good though. It's a very emotional sort of album, but it's also quite upbeat in terms of the actual sort of melodies and the actual sort of songs themselves. So I think it's worth checking out. And I can see why Progressive Rock Magazine gave it their album of the year, but it's definitely worth checking out. So again, check out that link in the description below for that album. The next one is a little bit of a cheat because it's an EP rather than an album, but I just wanted to give them a little bit of because it's something that I've listened to a lot. I mean, there's only 4 or 5 songs on this. It's called Moral Planet 2. It's obviously this was an album. This is an album by a band from basically from my home county, Essex. Nothing But Thieves. Now they're a bit more sort of indie rock than they are sort of heavy rock or heavy metal, and they're much more. They're like a sort of Radiohead combined with, say, the Killers. You know, that's what how I would describe them to people that don't know them. But they make really good albums. That they're young, they're hip and trendy, and that's why that's not exactly true. But you know, sometimes it's good to listen to new music that a lot of younger people may be getting into. And I think this EP is brilliant. There's songs on here that are heavy. There's songs that are slow, very much like sort of. Some songs really remind me of Radiohead on here, but they are starting. They've released 3 albums now, and obviously this EP. So they're starting to develop their sound, moving a bit more away from sort of those other bands that they're obviously heavily influenced by, and into more their own sound. But definitely worth checking out. Nothing But Thieves. I mean, all 3 of their albums are great, but this EP came out this year. The last album came out just at the back end of last year, so it didn't make it into it. But it's a great album, and they're a great band, and I'm looking forward to what they're going to do next. So, Moral Panic 2, Nothing But Thieves is in my top 10. Next, we're going to a band that I've been a big fan for a long time. They have really sort of pushed on over the last few albums, mainly because they've taken on a very good drummer. So this is Pineapple Thief and their album Nothing But The Truth. It's a sort of reimagining of some of their other older albums into a new sort of structure. And the drummer I'm talking about is Gavin Harrison, who, you know, people that are fans of Porcupine Tree will know all about. But he certainly brought a new energy to the band. I mean, he contributes, I think, to the songwriting, so the songs seem better. But this band, Pineapple Thief, have been going for like 20 odd years. They've had probably about 16 albums. They were a bit more progressive rock. Now they're becoming a bit more, I don't know, I wouldn't call them mainstream because not many people know, but their song structures are a little bit more shorter, a little bit more snappy, a bit more immediate, a bit more accessible, I think. But they're a really great band, and you know, if you're a fan of progressive rock, then you should definitely give them a go. So that's Nothing But The Truth by Pineapple Thief. The next album is another band that I've been quite a big fan of for quite a few years, and this is a German band called Sylvan. And their album that they released this year was called 1 to 0. Again, a real return to form. Their sort of standout album is Promiscuous Silence, which is a sort of concept album, and it's a brilliant album, and they've made some good albums after that, and a few good albums before as well. But I think that they've sort of lost their way a little bit over the last sort of few albums. But this album is really good, a real return to form, and it's you know, it's not an immediate album, but the more you listen to it, the more the little melodies come into your ears and stuff like that, and it's a brilliant album. So give them a try. 1 to 0 by Sylvan. Then my last album on my top 10 is by a British band called The Winter Machine. Now, they're very much in a sort of neo-progressive rock sort of setup. So they're a bit like early Marillion, or, you know, bands like Pendragon and that other band that I've completely forgotten the name of. The band that Mick Pointer's in, Arena, that's the other band there. So if you like those sort of bands and you think you'll like this, they sound very English, so there's obviously a lot of that Genesis sort of sound in their music. But again, there's parts of it that's quite modern. So it's called Kites, and it's by an album called The Winter Machine. I don't think they're on a major label. I think they're self-financed. They're not a massive band, but they're definitely a band to watch out for. And this is their 3rd album. So Kites by This Winter Machine rounds off my top 10 albums of 2021. And the other thing I wanted to add was that of bands that I may have discovered this year. Now, one of those bands I've discovered, they haven't released albums this year, but they released them last year and over the last few years. And the last 3 albums are really good and worth listening. So it's a band from Denmark. They're called Pyramaze. They're very much in that sort of progressive power metal sort of arena. Really catchy, but quite heavy, you know, big double bass drums, keyboards, the whole sort of thing. Very much of that European power metal, like Helloween and those sort of bands. But the singer is brilliant. They've got some great melodies. I wouldn't say they're overly long, complex songs. That's why they're more sort of power metal than progressive metal. But there's a little smatterings of progressiveness in their albums. But their last album, Epitaph, is brilliant. There's some really great songs. And as I say, the songs are so catchy. They're so heavy, but so catchy, which to me is very much like Helloween. Then the album before that, Contingent, and then Disciples of the Sun, which a lot of people say is their sort of standout album. But all three of those albums, I'll put the link to the latest one, Epitaph, and you can go from there. But I think they're really worth giving. If you like power, progressive, heavy metal sort of stuff, you like your Iron Maiden, your Helloween, etc., then give them a go. Pyramaze, they're my discovery for 2021. So that's it for my reviewing music. As I said, I've got big anticipation for what we're going to get next year. Certainly the Marillion new album will be out, but there's lots of albums by bands like Placebo that I'm looking forward to. I expect a new album by Winger, another band that I'm a big fan of. The Scorpions will be releasing a new album as well, and there's probably loads more that that I can't even think of off the top of my head. And there's probably stuff that haven't even been announced that will probably be released next year. So, hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what your top album is of 2021. Is it a heavy metal album? Maybe it's a rock album. Maybe you dig the new Adele album. I don't know. Maybe even Coldplay. You know what I think about Coldplay on this channel. But let me know what your favourite album is. Maybe you've discovered a new band, and maybe that this discovery is something that other people need to know. So let me know in the comments if you've discovered a great new hard rock or heavy metal band this year. So, hope you've enjoyed it. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. I know that we do a lot of beer stuff on this video, but next year is one thing I want to try to do more music. It's just that it's a lot easier to review a beer and less time consuming. Where a lot of the music stuff, like this video, I have to sort of think about it and write it down and write my thoughts and stuff, so I've got everything sort of to some extent in place. So there's going to be more ranking next year. I've got some other things that I've been thinking about doing. I'm going to do my top 10 concept albums. So there's that to look forward to. So please, if you're not a subscriber and you like that sort of music, if you like hard rock, heavy metal, progressive rock and metal, then please subscribe to the channel, because I think you'll get a lot out of it, even if you're not into the beer stuff. So I've whittled on enough. And until the next one, Happy New Year and keep on rocking.